What's the tea with ACP? Here's the tea with ACP. That's kind of cute.
Welcome to What's the Tea with ACP, a virtual talk show where featured artists chat with us about what's going on in their lives, their social experiences, and their art. Our series got a bit of an update. I know it's been a while since you've seen us, but we'll now be interviewing our artists who'll be associated within our All Compass Project's recitals and series and performances. We're looking forward to bringing you exclusive content, artist interviews, and behind the scenes footage of our featured artists. And this edition of What's the Tea with ACP, we're excited to have Vanessa Becerra, Nia Drummond, Juan Calderon, and Marcus Norris joining us today. Our tea of the day is Versatility. These are some of the artists who'll be performing and who have composed music for All Compass Project's Emerging Composer Concert. Through this competition, ACP hopes to build connections with the world's rising composers and provide a platform for young musicians to combine their values and principles to new music and especially the genre of art song. It's our goal to share the transformative and regenerative powers of intimate song sharing, and by doing so, instill incentive for the growth of this genre. Winners of this competition receive a cash prize, and their submitted work produced, performed, and recorded in an upcoming ACP project. This annual competition is open to composition students of any age whose submitted work meets the requirements. So let's talk a little bit about our tea today. It is versatility. The definition of versatility is the ability to adapt or to be adapted to many different functions or activities. So I'm going to ask Juan first. If you can tell us a little bit about the pieces that you submitted to ACP's competition and why you feel it fits the mission of All Compass Projects.
Yes, I submitted 6 songs for soprano and guitar, and they're based on using various influences of traditional Colombian rhythms such as pasillo and bambuco. And I set the poetry of Octavio Gamboa, who is a hometown poet from Cali, Colombia. Kind of obscure. He has a statue in my hometown, but I couldn't find any published literature of him. And so I just asked his relatives, like one of his surviving relatives, because he died in 1990. So he sent me like a whole bunch of poems, and I picked up 6 of them, and they kind of 3 themes of life and death and youth and love and loneliness.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing. That's like great detail. Thank you. And Marcus, can you tell us a little bit about your piece as well?
Yeah, so the piece I submitted is called Block Party. The prompt for it was to write anything inspired by 2020. And my first thought was like, it's going to be a depressing song, the pandemic, we were isolated. We didn't know when it would ever end. Was also doing the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor protests and march in the street. And I was like, man, while I was in it and I didn't have a light at the end of the tunnel, I was like, I can't write that depressing piece. I've done some pieces like that lean into the trauma of it, but I was like, I just mentally didn't have it in me at the time. So I was like, but it's still very important to me to be authentic and to be an artist of my time. And so I thought a way I would do it was I would talk about from the perspective of a young Black woman just trying to live her life in this during all this. And so it's a funny take, but it's a very real take, and it's in that context. And I hope it's an enjoyable time for everybody.
That is great. Thank you so much, Marcus. So I'm wondering if Vanessa, I think Nia might have had to pop out for a moment. But Vanessa, can you talk a little bit about what it's like performing Juan's music and what it's been like to engage in his music in this way?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
So far, so beautiful. I'm really loving learning these 6 songs. I don't have a lot of experience performing with guitar, but I have an awesome recording I've been listening to on Spotify, so thank you for that. And I enjoy the fact that it's going to be like very. I mean, singing with the pianist is also intimate and collaborative, but something about the guitar just evokes this like extra layer. This like it's a different atmosphere. So I am super looking forward to that. But so far, it's a rangy piece. Actually, there's like lots of low, there's lots of high, but I'm glad because speaking of versatility at all, I don't really call myself like a stratospheric soprano or anything. I am glad that I do have access to some lower stuff, and so it's nice to get a piece that like really where I get to like really tap into that, because a lot of other literature that's like classically for soprano, they like composers are too afraid to go below like E on the staff. So yeah, so far so beautiful. I'm excited to do this live in 2 weeks, a live performance. Hallelujah. Yeah.
I know. That's amazing. I can't wait to hear it live as well. I've listened to both of the pieces and they are, or some, actually, I've listened to some of Juan, some of the 6 songs, and then Marcus's as well, and they are great pieces of music, really interesting and really culturally connected. Nia, could you talk a little bit about how it feels singing Marcus's music?
Singing Marcus's music is really, I'm trying to find the perfect word. It's like if I was a genius composer as Marcus, this is what I would write, you know. It's my thoughts. It's all right. It's my thoughts. It's true. It's authentic. You know, that's the only way I can put it. It's true and it's authentic. As I wish every piece that I have to sing and will sing can be.
Amazing. Thank you. So Nia, how do you feel like there is a cultural connection through the composition of the music as well? Like not just the lyrics, but also the musical composition and the style. Do you feel like there's a cultural significance there?
Oh, 1,000%. I wouldn't expect anybody else that's not of, our culture to really fully understand the text. I mean, you can to a certain degree, but to a certain degree you cannot. And I think that's the part that I really love about it, as exclusionary as I might sound. But it's about time that I can sing a piece of music that I really feel comfortable and there's an honesty behind it for me. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Right.
Totally. I totally get that because a lot of the text is very specific, like kind of like dialogue and language that we probably use in like everyday, speech, which is really cool to see. I actually have a question from Juan. I know that you have to pop off, but I I'm going to ask you a question. Um, Juan, really quickly before you have to go, What are you looking forward to with this piece being performed? What are you most looking forward to with this work?
Oh, well, it's the first time I'm gonna perform it live, so that's gonna be quite an experience. You know, I recorded it, but I haven't performed it live, so it's gonna be great.
That's amazing. And you are playing the guitar with the performance. So you're composer, artist, instrumentalist, all wrapped up into one. Multifaceted, versatile. I know you have to run, Juan, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys.
We
Have fun.
appreciate you. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
So Juan has the question of, as an immigrant, he's concerned about the issues of identity that he's often found that his music reaches more of an audience when he treats the themes relating to his national origins, and he sees that in some Latinx composers in the US. So what degrees of typecasting are you comfortable with so that your music reaches a niche audience? And to what degree do you identify with the role you're put into? So it's a kind of complicated question, but to break it down is basically when there's a kind of thing of like, do I put my heritage into this music? Will it get pigeonholed? And if I do put my heritage in this music, should the people who are performing it only be of the ethnicity or origin or kind of, it's typecasting. What degree of typecasting for the music are you comfortable with?
I wish he was here because I feel like maybe he could unpack it a little bit more. Respectfully, I think that's the wrong question. I think do we say Bach is like German typecasting? Do we say Debussy is like French typecasting when the way in the style he writes in? You know what I mean? Or like maybe like Stravinsky and he's doing like Russian folk songs. Is he Russian typecasting? No, I've never heard anyone say that for any of those other people. And I do believe they might say it to Juan or to me or any of us. But I think that's the wrong question. I think if you're as an artist, I think you have to you express yourself, you express your culture, and I think it's very important that we do express our culture. Otherwise, either A, those stories don't get heard, or B, someone who isn't from that culture will gladly and authoritatively, express that culture having no ties to it or not knowing the real story or you know what I mean? So I think what Juan's doing is important. Expressing himself and sharing the work of the poet from his hometown. And when I see him in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna make sure I tell him like that's the work he's doing is very, very important.
Well, I think also I just reread over what he wrote, and it seems that he's found that the music that he writes that relates more to his national origins usually gets more recognition. So kind of having that like, do I end up keeping the tie of my national origin or like my historical context? Do I have to put that into my music in order for it to be a hit or in order for people to be responsive to it? So Vanessa, it seems like you might want to chime in.
Yeah, I think from what I gathered, I also wish he was here to maybe help clarify. But I think it is a challenge, I would imagine, as a composer and in my own ways as a performer. This has happened a couple of times, but like, how much do you need to lean into your cultural identity, your heritage, your roots, where you were born, et cetera, et cetera? Like, it's you get more recognition, or you're recognized more fully as a composer if you like really lean into the fact that you're Colombian, so you should write in Spanish, it should be a guitar, it should be like very exotic sounding or whatever the heck. Whereas like there are plenty of white composers, for instance, sorry to like really hit the nail on the head, but like there are plenty of composers from Western Europe who had Spanish influence, but like it wasn't a problem. I think that's what he's trying to get at, is like, what does it take before somebody who's not Western European to be programmed on the same concert list with a ton of other like Western European composers. Like you said, you were programmed alongside Beethoven. Like that's I feel like that's kind of a goal, you know, is like whenever you can say like my music is on the same piece of paper, on the same docket, it's going to be performed by the same caliber, the same high quality of artists. And I'm not Beethoven, I'm not white, I'm just being my authentic self. And so I wonder that too, like if as far as opera goes, like there is, in my opinion, I feel like there is one very successful Latino composer who didn't write zarzuela, who didn't write, I mean, the mariachi operas are beautiful and I give them huge kudos, but like Daniel Catan is the only composer I can think of who is programmed on the main stages at opera houses, and God bless him. I'm so glad that, I mean, I admire his music so much. It's so beautiful, but like it's the only one we have, and even he has to like really lean into like his Mexican roots, and it's very sophisticated composing, totally equal to anybody that we would perform, like Strauss. He's basically Mexican Strauss, but he has to lean into his cultural identity a lot, and ever since him, there's been like nobody. So that's just, I wonder if that's what Juan was trying to say.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the route, I think, of saying like, in order to be successful as a BIPOC person, you know, do I have to specifically lean into my roots in order to have my pieces taken seriously or performed more regularly?
But I kind of wonder, like, and there's no one right answer. This is, you know, everybody feel how they feel. But for me, it's like is it a have to? You know what I mean? Like, is it a or is that, like, for me, it doesn't feel like a, like, I guess maybe that's just my style. Like I think maybe the equivalent for Black folks might be like trauma. Um, like a lot of times people don't. I think maybe that might be a better like parallel. Maybe I don't know. Like I said, Juan's not here anymore, but because I feel like leaning into the cultural part, like it doesn't feel like I have to me. Like that it just, that's the way it comes out, and that's how it would. But I think maybe one thing that might be a parallel or something is like for Black folks, a lot of times it's trauma. Like people only want to hear like the trauma or like, you know, there's been a big uproar in movies lately, like because people are tired of just seeing like these Black trauma movies, or so just thinking through it in real time, I kind of wonder if maybe that's if that's the parallel, and I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I totally think it. I think that it makes a really great parallel, because typically when we look at Black works, the ones that sell the most deal with Black trauma and also like Black joy that then is deflated and sometimes resolved at the end, or like that's basically what we see, right? Especially on the operatic stage and sometimes through art song. And typically in art song, we see songs that were created from like, you know, hymns or spirituals or things that were born out of tragedy. And so I think for him, he's asking about how for a Black musician, how trauma sells, does his cultural heritage sell? And I think that he's seen that that's happened with some of his music. So that's a very interesting conversation. I plan on asking him more about that when we get him back.
Just real quick, like similarly, the Spanish or like Latino parallel is like, for me, there's just seems to be this like caricature of like, oh, like, yeah, like this. It's always like sassy, spicy, like spicy Latina, like. It's like this, like we all have the exact same range of emotions. We all feel all the spectrum. We have access to every single feeling, just like every other movie that we see that doesn't feature a spicy person or a very, very traumatic event. Like, our life experiences are really not so different unless people have gone out of their way to control certain life experiences. And that's why we have these really silly stereotypes and caricatures. It was not a choice.
Totally. I want to ask, actually, because that's a good kind of motion into this next topic, is how we see things changing within our art form. And actually, this is Nia's question of, with the introduction of the Me Too movement, how does or should it affect the legacy of those who are accused or found guilty of accusations of abuse? Now, this is pretty, intense question, but I think it's also something that we have to make sure that we're acknowledging that sometimes in our industry, unfortunately, there are people who abuse their powers, right? And I think that something that All Compass Projects champions itself on is highlighting voices that have been abused by that power, right? And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are, or Nia, actually, could you expand upon that and why you felt like that was an important question to ask?
I asked that question because looking at the amount of the rise of the Me Too movement, and seeing how people that have clearly have done bad things, or accused of doing bad things. Yes, there's a cancel culture that should be happening, but I also, the same token, the James Devines and even the Wagners. Wagner was a whole anti-Semite, and people still program his music. People still sing his music. Yes, his music is absolutely fabulous. I love me a good Olivas told. I love a good Tristan and Isolde. But should we be performing his music, as beautiful as it may be? But was it, coming out of but the beautiful music came out of a very sour vessel. So should we program that music?
Wow, that
As
is a
beautiful as it is.
great and deep question. But please feel free to answer freely if you are unsure of the answer. That's okay too. Um, I would love to hear what you say. If you need more time, I have an opinion, but please feel free. Shall I? Okay. All right. So I think that as the years go on, this music, I think it's kind of the same thing that Disney has done, right? Where there are like problematic cartoons that depict things in a way that is negative, right? In a way that is like not actually of good cultural significance, and they acknowledge that in the beginning of their films or in the beginning of their programming, so that the audience is aware that like this is not okay. We know that this is not okay. We recognize that this is not okay. However, we want to make sure that we also are able to spread this art, because sometimes the art is, like you said, very good art, even though it came out of a sour vessel. And so I think something that if a company wants to do something by someone that we know was problematic, that there should be a little disclaimer of, we acknowledge that this composer, this artist was unfortunately an abuser of power. And we know that that can leave a sour taste in some people's mouths, but we want to acknowledge that we know that this happened. We want the people out there to know that this happened, but we also want to make sure that the artists who are performing this music are able to perform it. So maybe something like that is a possibility. I'm curious. Marcus, you look like you were ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I just like, first off, I'm for truth, and if someone truthfully did these things, then the people should be able to tell their story and all those things. Period. And if that paints people that were respected in bad lights, then maybe they just shouldn't have been terrible people. And secondly, I feel like, for me, just my personal views is like, this isn't a topic we need more male opinions on. like I feel like men have been running stuff for a long time and it didn't do very well. And I feel like basically I feel like my personal view is like, I think I want to follow the women on this, and what do women that have been wronged in these situations think that we should do, and what would they like to do, and how would they like this to be resolved? And I think, man, we just gotta listen, and then support. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like just wash our hands of the situation and be done with it, but I mean, like, I don't know that in my mind, I don't know that men should necessarily be like leading the vanguard or making the decisions on this. It's like, well, what do the women think we should do? And then support, in my opinion.
Totally.
Well, circling back to like the beginning, I was thinking, how would I explain Wagner to a child, or like any sort of like very young music education class or music appreciation? Like, you're gonna run into Wagner, you're gonna run into certain conductors, certain singers. You're gonna because they made huge contributions to this subject that we want kids to keep loving and exploring and learning about. But like you said, the truth is the truth, and there's the contribution can be just as valid as the issue, the whatever sourness came out of it. So I think on that end, there's just no room to like dance around it anymore. I think people have become very used to and familiar with, well, that's too awkward, that's too sticky, we all know it, so let's just not talk about it. Like, no, it only takes like 5 extra minutes or whatever. You can go on and on and on all day about it, but I think it's worth teaching from the get-go, because also then it to a child, again, I'm like looking at it from their perspective, is like, then they know, from the fundamentals, like, this was a bad decision that this person made. But at the same time, there is to a degree, like, people say this all the time, like the separating the art from the artist. And I guess, and this is totally in another direction, but like Michael Jackson, like, if I hear a Michael Jackson song come on, like, how do I not move? Like, I'm going to start dancing, but in the back of my head, I hate to think about it, but I don't know. I'm even right now, I'm like running into myself, because there's no justification, and there's zero tolerance. There's zero room for like condoning anything like that. But like, to just realize, like, whoa, what did this recording happen like before or after like some terrible incident that we only found out about years and years later? But Marcus, to your point, I think that there's also within that same culture of like, people always know what's going on. It's not like Wagner had this like huge secret and nobody was able to like hold him accountable. Whoever Michael Jackson's assistants or blah, 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 like, people know. And I think that there needs to be some sort of culture shift about accountability and acknowledging and not being afraid to get in trouble or get your palm slapped or whatever, because you are checking the person who is abusing power, abusing authority. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the risks are really high. If you lose your job, you lose, access to healthcare, blah, blah, blah. Like, the laundry list is infinite. But like, ultimately, I think there's so much power in doing right instead of being right. And that's, I think we just need to reprioritize and shift what is truly important. And, money, status, that stuff is garbage. Like, we're not going anywhere with that. What matters is right now and who is being harmed right now. If you have the power and the opportunity to address it and stop it, then you should. And that's hard. It's going to take a long time. And I mean, to really get down to nitty gritty, it's just mental health. Like, there's a reason people seek these things out, and there's a reason why people who are in power and authority feel like they need to exert that even more, and it's because something's missing. They need to talk, they need help, and we all need mental health help, really. Yeah.
Totally. Well, on a lighter note, I would love to know what you all are excited about for this upcoming concert. There is a concert coming up on October 29th, yes, at 7:30 at Opera America in New York City at Mark Sorka Hall. And again, there will be different performers, different artists coming in to perform and works being performed. And I'd love to hear what you're excited about that you're bringing to this performance, this new voices, new works. Nia, why don't we start with you?
I'm excited to work with Marcus to bring this music that's on a piece of paper to life, truly, and to hear the other pieces and to just be in a room with everybody, and work together truly. I'm excited to meet everyone and, just be in everybody's presence. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. Vanessa.
I am also really looking forward to hearing everybody's music and just getting a taste of what all these new composers are thinking of, because that's the future. This is what we're hopefully going to be performing for a long time. So I'm really excited to collaborate with composer / artist, since Juan and I are going to perform together. And Cube has written a really beautiful set, so I'm really excited to get to take my unique stab at it.
Beautiful, thank you. And what about you, Marcus?
I'm really excited to be with Nia and the people aspect. Like earlier, one of the questions was about the recording and how does that relate? And it's better than nothing for sure, 100%. But it's not a replacement from being in a room with the musicians, from being in a room with an audience. The energy that happens is like this magic that happens when you're just in the space with music and the people. So I'm excited about all that. I'm excited to see an audience react to Block Party and how that goes. I'm just excited for the people, man.
That's amazing. You might hear people outside. It's like they're having a block party outside my door. But I'm so excited to hear these pieces and to hear your beautiful voices. And I am wondering, well, okay, this is we're wrapping up here, but from what I've heard from you all as artists, it actually seems like the topic is so apropos because you all are so versatile, right? Not just only are you artists, but you are also activists. You have interesting thoughts and you have interesting notions that need to be put into the world. And I think that as an artist of our time period, we have to, and also artists have been, right, since the beginning, a form of activists and change makers and motion shakers. And I think that we've seen so much of that in the conversation that we've had with you today, and how much your versatility really shows through, not just as an artist, but also as a human being. And I so appreciate that because y'all roll with the punches. And I love that about you. So just to wrap up, if you all have any other new things happening or want to, shout out your social media or anything like that, where can we find you? Where can we find more about your music making? I would love to hear more about that. Let's start with Marcus, actually.
Yeah. So just say like, how can people stay in touch with me? All these things.
Yeah, how can people stay in touch with you? How can they learn more about your music? Right? How can we connect on social media if you have that?
Yeah.
Um,
What's cool about playing works by living composers? Well, first off, you don't have to deal with the issue of did I say something terrible hundreds of years ago, like Wagner, for one. For two, you can ask me anything. Like, say you're like, man, like really specifically, like I get some questions that are oh, you did a minor seventh and a minor seventh, and then like right when I was gonna be tired of it, you switched and did like a major seventh, and like really specific questions, or like why did you write like an F sharp there? I'm not saying my answers will be satisfactory because a lot of times I'm just like, I don't know, man. I just liked how it sounded. But you can ask me any of these questions. I am on Instagram. It's just my name at Marcus Norris. All of my pieces and all of my sheet music, I make sure to put them all online for people to get. And it's just at my website, marcusnorris.com, southsidesymphony.org, or at Southside Symphony on Instagram. All of these things. Yeah, just reach out to me. And I love nerding out about music. So you're never bothering me.
Nia, go
Marcus,
ahead.
where are you based?
So I'm based in LA. I spend a lot of time in Chicago. I feel like I'm back and forth all the time, but I'm primarily based in LA right now.
That's amazing. Thank you, Marcus. Well, Nia, go ahead. Go ahead and tell us how can we find you? How can we find more about your music making?
All right. So my name is Nia Drummond, and most everything I post is on Instagram. I'm terrible at social media. Terrible, just terrible. That's you shaking your head. Yes, Marcus. But you can find me on Instagram at Nia Drummond, and yeah, I'm also on Facebook too. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Nia. And Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit about how to find you, how to hear about what's happening next?
Sure. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. My handle is just my name, Vanessa Becerra, with a little underscore because there were too many Vanessa Becerras. So, and then on Facebook, I think it's Vanessa Becerra Soprano or my website. But yeah, I love what you said. Like we're artists, we're activists. Art is activism, and activism can sound like super high pressure or intense or something, but it's in small doses too, just tiny steps, whatever you can do to just contribute and help whatever issue. And I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. I'm a Texan at heart and in every way except for a lot of ways, but and I'm super proud. This is a late plug because it already happened, but we just did this concert last weekend for Fort Worth Opera called Entre Amigos. And, I think as a tiny example, there is, I'm sure this is a familiar conversation, but like whenever people program a Hispanic heritage concert, there's like a lot of tropes, a lot of really basic, easy, like, oh, Spanish, let's just do a bunch of zarzuela. And, we were able to do actual, like the most authentic, relatable programming that we as Latinos and Hispanics like really identify with. And we explored more than just Spain. We explored more than just Mexico. And anyway, I'm just trying to shout out Afton Battle and Fort Worth Opera for giving us that opportunity because it makes a huge difference to have a platform and to have a mission. And the same here for Oral Compass projects. I think this is mega. This is huge. I hope that take it on the road. Like there should be an Oral Compass projects in LA and San Francisco, Chicago, everywhere, because the new composers and giving young musicians an opportunity to get their music heard and seen, and also awards and money. the arts are struggling, obviously, but we can keep it alive. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I am just so delighted that I was able to chat with you today. I'm so delighted I was able to chat with you today and to get to know you all better and get to know about your music making and composition and how you go about your processes. Again, this is Aural Compass Projects. What's the Tea with ACP? And you can find out more at auralcompassprojects.org. And again, there will be the Aural Compass Projects Emerging Composer Composition on October 29th at 7:30 p.m. We hope to see you there. You can get tickets online. And these amazing artists will be featured in that concert. Again, thank you all for being here. Appreciate you so much. And we'll chat soon. Bye.
What's the tea?